Allie with Potomac Beads. Join me in creating this beautiful Monet bracelet based on a ladder stitch and learning that awesome embellishment. So many different materials can be used, but if you find yourself needing any, check out the links below to shop with us online. Gather up your materials as well as your bead mat and let's get started. So to begin our bracelet base that we're going to embellish on top of, I have sitting here some 8/0 Toho Seed Beads in Starlight color and my button here. I want to put 2 needles, and these are 2 size 12 needles. 10s will work for the base, but then you'll need to switch over to size 12s as we do the embellishment, on a 5 feet piece of green wildflower beading thread. There's 1 needle on either end of the thread. I want you to take your thread and needle through the button and make sure that you have equal amounts of thread on either side of the button. From here, add 1 of our 8/0 seed beads and bring down your thread and needle so that they're both going through that 8/0 seed bead the same direction. So both needles are going into the bead the same way and out of the bead the same way. That's going to bring that single bead right to the exterior of the button. We'll have an opportunity as we're going in and embellishing to reinforce and put another piece of thread through that piece. From here, what we want to do is get ready for our base. So the base is going to consist of just 8/0 seed beads. To go in and create the base, we're going to separate our thread and needle, and I want you to add 1 and 2 on your right needle and 1 and 2 on your left needle. Go ahead and let those drop down next to that single bead that you have at the base of your button. From here, you can put down one of the needles, either the right or the left. It does not matter which side you're starting with, but you're going to add 4 seed beads onto your needle and thread. We're going to be doing a ladder stitch with 2 needles. 4 beads go onto the needle and thread. I'm starting on the right hand side, and I'm going to go and sew through the 4 beads that we just added previously from the left to the right. 1, 2, skipping over that middle bead, and then going in through number 3 and number 4. Give a pull, and that will lay against the top. Now see how both of my needles are to the bottom of those beads along that first 4 row? I'm going to step up by taking my needle that's on the right hand side and going through that second row of 4 from the right to the left. The needle that's on the left side, we're going to do the exact same thing but opposite. We're going to go in from the left-hand side, go through that row of 4 beads, all the way over to the right. At this point, your needle and thread are coming out of the second row of 4, 1 needle on the right-hand side, 1 needle on the left-hand side. From now on, it's very repetitive, adding in 1, 2, 3, and 4 beads on the right needle, laying them on top of the previous row by taking that needle toward the left-hand side, grabbing the needle on the left, so back through those 4 beads in the opposite direction. So you're going back through those 4 beads from the left-hand side over toward the right. What this looks like is between each row of 4 beads, your needles are crisscrossing, so there's 2 pieces of thread through each row of 4. You're going to continue again, adding on 4 beads, crisscrossing, 4 beads, crisscrossing. This is going to be the base of the bracelet that will then come up between the beads and embellish by adding all of our crystals, our leaves, and our flowers. Once you have approximately 6 inches of your ladder stitch here, you are going to, which is about 50 rows, give or take, you are going to go in and create a loop for your button to sit inside of. To create your loop, you're coming out of either side of the last row of 4. You're going to drop in 2 beads on the right needle, 2 beads on the left needle. From here, I want you to add one central bead. I added it already on the right needle, and I'm going to take my left needle and go through the same direction to create a nice triangle. Anytime I use a button or a loop, I want to make sure to bring it back into more of a teardrop shape rather than a big open oval. That's going to create an issue with your button, and sometimes you can lose your bracelet. From here, we're going to add beads on both needles going in the same direction to make a loop to fit over our button. I want you to add approximately 22 Toho seed beads to both thread and needles now. If you want, you can do it with one needle, picking up all of your beads, and then drop these down, grab the other needle, and progress through those beads with the same directional workings of your needle. So the needle goes through the same way of the other one that I'm currently holding on to. Once you have those 28 Toho seed beads through both pieces of thread, you're going to bring both needles through that first bead toward the bracelet section. So one needle is going to come through, and then you can pick up the other needle and bring that one through as well. When both needles are through them, we're going to separate them out to begin our embellishment with one needle going through the two beads on the right side and out toward the exterior, and the other needle going through the two beads on the left side and out toward the exterior. Give a nice tight pull to tighten up your thread and make sure you don't see any additional thread inside the loop of your Toho seed beads. So to progress, I'm going to continue with some of my little flower caps here, as well as my daisy spacers and my 2mm bicones and my rondelles. Now, you can decorate the top of this however you want to. You'll have tons of supplies to be able to make it your own. I'm going to first work with just one needle. And this one needle, I'm going to bring out between beads number 1 and number 2 of that first row of 4. Coming out between those, I want to add a flower cap. Then I'm going to add a daisy spacer and then one of my crystals. You can see how that makes it so it's just going to kind of sit right on the top. Go back down through the daisy spacer, back down through that crystal or through that check leaf, and down to the end of that row of 4. Give a nice tight pull, and that crystal will just hold that first section of our little fluff. From here, we're going to sew into the opposite next row, and we're going to come out between beads number 2 and 3. So the first one was between beads 1 and 2. This one's between beads 2 and 3. I'm going to change up and grab my other color of my flower cups, another one of my daisy spacers, this time the opposite side of my crystal. Go back through the daisy spacer, back through that check glass bead. And as I pull that tight, I want to make sure that the check glass bead sits tight along the Toho seed beads, and sew through beads 2 and 1 as I work back over to the right side. From here, I'm going to go in now into row number 3. And row number 3, I'm going to come out between beads number 3 and 4. So we've been between 1 and 2, between 2 and 3, and now we're between 3 and 4. From here, I'll go back to color number 1. I can switch it up if I want to, and this time not use the daisy spacer or use the daisy spacer, up to you. Go in, drop those down on the design, go back through the metal and the check glass, and out toward the end. So you can see how that lines up and really sits right on top of one another going into a diagonal section. From here, I'm going to go down into my next row of my stitch. So you're going to end up with 50 of these on. I'm going to go into my next row of my stitch and start back over between beads number 1 and number 2. So you're just going to continue down the rows, adding in the variety of your beads and your crystals and your flower cups as you zigzag down the line, adding between beads 1 and 2 first, between 2 and 3, 4 and between 3 and 4, and then continue that zagging and zigzagging of your crystal flower cups. For this design, you can see how it's starting to look with the crystals getting added in and the flowers there. And I'm coming out now with my other piece of thread. The piece of thread that I was working with is getting low, and I'll show you how to add a new piece of thread. But until there, we're going to show and progress a little bit more on the design. So coming out the end of the loop here, I went ahead with the other one and came out after the first bead on the left-hand side there. I'm going to do the opposite this time, coming out through the first bead on the right-hand side. We're going to do the exact same rotation here, except what we're going to do is we are going to skip the middle. So we're just going to go between the first and second and the third and the fourth bead when you're working on it. I have a collection here of some drop beads in the 3x5 millimeter, some 6 millimeter bicones, as well as some of the 5x7, the 5x9 millimeter leaves as well. So to start with those, and I'm also going to add some beads along the edge and along the side. Now keep in mind we're going down the piece now. You can always come back as well if you want to fill in even more. So along the middle here, and you have a couple of your Polaris 11 seed beads, you're just going to pick up the additional beads at random. The main focus is the flowers, and from here we're going to have some fun. So I'm going to add one of my 6 millimeter, or one of my bicones here, then down after that 11 seed bead and out to the other side. So the 11 seed bead, just like I was using the crystals with the flower, is just going to hold that in place. As I come out the end of the row here, take my needle and thread out to the end, I'm also going to add additional beads to the end. When it comes to the leaves, I'll add one leaf with an 11 on either side and progress into the next row. Coming out the next row between beads 3 and 4 here. You can see that leaf will just kind of sit off there to the side. And then between these beads here, I'll grab one of my other beads. So with the teardrop beads here in the metallic bronze, I can go up or down with the thicker end going towards the top or the bottom. Add that on. Again, go back through just the crystal, and then the whole way over through the side. So on the last pass, we did the middle, between the middle 2 beads. We did between beads 1 and 2, between 2 and 3, and between 3 and 4. This time we're just doing between 1 and 2, between 3 and 4, and then also adding along the outer edge. Along the outer edge too, if you want, you can add an additional flower, if you have a couple of those out. And I'm not going to be adding leaves to every single edge here on my exterior, but I am adding through a couple. You can have fun kind of taking the thread and needle, poking it out around wherever is open, adding your flair and your color design. You can even add a group of seed beads if you want, and really playing around with the materials and the colorway that was provided. As I come out on the side this next time, here, adding in my beads, I'm really filling it in. I'm going to add one of my bicones on the side. 1 11 1 bicone, 1 11 just so it sticks out a little bit more. And then once again, back through the bicone, the 11 and down to the next row. This time when I come out on the next row, I'll go ahead and I'll add a leaf in the middle. So I'm really taking this garden and expanding its view so that way it looks like wildflowers. Going in then, I would just want to maintain whatever direction my needle is going. So if my needle is going from the right to the left, I want to make sure to finish that row. Also, that I'm not catching on to beads from a previous row. Make sure that sticks up straight there. And you can see just in this simple little additions that we've only done a couple rows there, how cool it starts to look as this garden really starts to bloom. So I wanted to give a glimpse here of the progress and remind you that you have so many different materials to use. There is no right or wrong when it comes to how you're using the materials. Here I have one of the flowers with an 11-0 connecting on the side. Here I put 3 little beads above my drop to do a picot trim, same here with the 6mm. Adding leaves in the middle as well as leaves towards the exterior, even using some of the smaller crystals that I used along the side to connect one row to the other. You're just progressing, and if your needle pops out somewhere and you feel like adding a bead, go for it. You pick up your beads in whatever variety and pattern you want to. Do one of the crystals on top of a crystal, and then down into the design. And like I said, the only thing to kind of keep track of is which direction your needle was actually going toward. So there I have it, I'm filling it in. And I like leaves every so often just to keep, again, that kind of wildflower, and really popping that green out in different areas. Because of the way that this bracelet is designed, and again, kind of making your own, doing loops, doing picot trims, having fun with the leaves and with the flowers as well, you're going to get to a point where you run out of thread. So what do you do when you run out of thread? Because it's a 2-needle project, it's very, very easy. You can see right here, and also just take note that your band here is going to curve ever so slightly. That's just going to happen naturally as you have that more weight on the top. I have my needles coming out 2 rows right next to one another. All I'm going to do is take these needles off my thread, tie my thread ends together, right over left, left over right. Go ahead then and burn down your thread edges, and you will never see them among all of these beads. So that's where I'm not worrying about tucking them into the 8/0s or even beyond the flowers. And now all I'm going to do is cut a new piece of thread, ever so easy, and go back through the last row that my thread was coming out. One needle is going to go on the right, one needle on the left, and I'm continuing on adding in all of my flowers and my crystal bling to my little wildfire garden bracelet here. As you're progressing and adding more thread, you will get to a point where you are finished with one section if you're doing it. I'm kind of doing it inch by inch. I just wanted to make you aware that I'm just letting the thread that did my flower portion down there as I progress now, weaving back in those extra beads and making that fluff even more substantial. What I have done here at the end is after I added my last flower cap, I've gone through the beads up to the clasp, around the clasp, so I'm reinforcing that, and then brought the thread back down the other side, and I'm just letting it hang out there and wait as I continue to add in all my little leaves and my fluff and the rest of my crystals into my design. So I'm going to continue sewing, and then as I get back down here, I'll reinforce one more time and I'll show you how we knot off the thread. After you're done adding in all of your beads, you're just going to pick a section and just take the 2 thread ends a little bit away from the design and just simply knot those thread ends together. Right over left, left over right. The nice thing, like I went over before, is when you're doing a fluff bracelet like this, adding thread as well as getting to the end and tying off the thread, feeling really good about it, you can easily hide that thread inside the design and no one will ever see it once you burn down those thread edges. Once you're done with it then, you can happily wear your Monet Garden bracelet. It's sure to be a stopper with those beautiful artistic colors. As always, thank you so much for joining me in creating this Monet bracelet. Hopefully that ladder stitch and the embellishment on top springboard your imagination and give you some amazing, amazing ideas. You can look through your stash, come up with different color combos, different bead ideas, and different lengths and widths as well. I'm really excited to see you post your designs in our Facebook group for beading and jewelry making. There's also links below if you do need any of those materials or if you want to check out the kit online. Remember, if you haven't already, give a little thumbs up and subscribe so you don't miss anything from us here at Potomac Beads. Reminder too, if you have a great idea, suggestion, or even a question on this Monet bracelet, make sure to comment in the link below. As always, thanks so much for watching and enjoy your new Monet-inspired bracelet.